Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I'm gonna have to replace the boot on my drive axle for my IS250. On one of my previous videos, I was working on the differential. I was trying to take the axle out and I screwed up one of the boots. So in today's video, we're gonna have to go replace that boot because that boot was never designed to be serviceable. I'm gonna have to use one of those universal slip-on boots that you use a cone to slip on. That's the easiest and the only way you can actually do it on this unless you have all the special tools. So stay tuned. So right here we got the 2IS or the Lexus IS rear-wheel drive axle, and this thing's not serviceable from the factory because it's got this clamp on right here part on both sides. So they never expected you to ever replace or service these boots. The only option you have is to replace this whole entire assembly, which is over $1,000 like brand new from the dealer. You can get it from most of the discount dealers now for like around $800 to $900, and I've seen it as cheap as like $600 for one of the versions. I'm not sure if it's the exact one for this, but it's listed for the IS250 at least. For the ISF and the 350s, you're gonna have the same situation. It might be up there in the $9,000 to $1,000 range, so it's not affordable. Luckily, aftermarket wise, there's plenty available for around $100 to $150. The only thing that you have to worry about with aftermarket ones is how good the bearings are inside, because you never know the quality of those bearings or the balance of the shaft. So our only solution is to use one of these universal boots. So I picked up this boot right here. This is the brand from Amazon. I'll have a link down in the description if you need these. So this is pretty much a universal boot. What it's designed for is to squeeze over the whole thing with a cone. So instead of buying one of those $20, $30 cones on Amazon, I just went down to Dollar Tree, picked up this $1.25 cone right here. I'm gonna go ahead and cut a hole out of the end of here to get that shaft through, and then to basically just trim it down to right here where I get it right over and push it through. This thing will do the exact same thing as a $20 cone on Amazon, but this is a much easier solution. I've seen other people use funnels also, so that's another option. You could use a funnel. Basically a funnel like this that can go over and it'll do the same thing. The only problem, I was gonna use this funnel, but it doesn't go past that lip right there, and I wanted to go further on the diameter of mine. So this same kit right here comes with a pack of new grease, so we're gonna go ahead and use that after I clean out all the old grease there. And it comes with OEM style clamps. They're not exactly the OEM clamps, but they are the OEM style, where once you get it around, you squeeze that together and you get that kind of crimp right there, which is a much better secure crimp. In order to do that, you have to use this $20 tool right here. This is a copy of the OEM Toyota tool that does that crimping, but this is probably the best solution. They make the plier ones also for around the same price, but these are going to work much better right here. So the first thing I will do is I'm going to go ahead and cut the end of this off right here flush. I'm gonna go ahead and slide it through. Once I do that, measure where I need it, and then just trim it down to exactly where I need it. And then once we do that, we're gonna just lube that up. I'll probably use some Dawn soap and squeeze this baby on. Once you get it on, you see there's 3 or 4 options right there as far as the boot size. For our effort, we're gonna stop at the short one, which basically lines up with the OEM boot right there. So hopefully this is a good solution for ours, considering our drive axle only has like 50,000 miles on it and the bearings are perfectly fine in it. All right, you can see we drilled out that hole right there to fit it through here a little bit as we go through. I ended up trimming it right there, which is about 2 inches off the edge here. I created a line and then just cut it with some scissors, so we're perfect as far as that clearance goes. So we're gonna slip that boot right over to here once we get that thing onto there. First thing we need to do is cut this thing apart, cut the clamps off of here, clean out all the grease with a towel, and then get it all prepped up for the new boot. So the way to get this boot on there, especially when we're going in this way to fit that way, is to actually flip it inside out. So you flip it inside out, you lube up basically the outside of this with the grease, oil, or dishwashing liquid, whatever you want to use, and then slip it over the cone. So whatever you end up lubing it with, you probably just want to lube the cone side of it to slip it on. We want to keep the outside of this as free of any contaminants or anything as we can, especially any different oils, because the CV grease is a special lithium grease and we don't want to mix any other grease onto there or any other oils on the inside of this. So we got the axle clamped onto here on the vise, so I'm gonna go ahead and just cut these things off and take the whole boot off, clean this thing up before we put the new boot on. So the easiest way to take these OEM bands off is to just chisel those 3 little hooks that hook it on. This is a pretty beefy, heavy duty ass clamp from the OEM manufacturer. All the aftermarket ones are nowhere near as durable or as thick as this one is. So you can see that thing is hard to take off, but it's gonna hold forever. Now that we got the bands off, we'll go ahead and just cut this old boot off. Make sure we keep as much of the grease inside as we can. We just wanna slice it down near where this crack is. All right, we got it cleaned out for the most part. Go ahead and prep it, get the cone on here and put the new boot on and just tighten this baby back up. So I flipped this thing over earlier as I showed you. First thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and just use dishwashing liquid for this one. You could use lube or some other stuff like some people online do, but we'll go try with the Dawn and see if this thing lubes it up pretty good. But yeah, go ahead, just coat this thing. Then we'll go ahead and slide this baby over and get it onto this thing. Stretch it over. The main part is trying to stretch the small hole over this thing just to get it to clear. Once we get it to clear, then we can just put it onto here and then much harder than it looks. If you guys are in a cold environment, try heating this up with a heat gun. That'll help kind of slip it around the top too. This thing is harder than it looks. All right, I heated it up a little bit with a heat gun just to see if I get this top over. Try heating it up again. Try it again. This time I put another funnel on top to make it easier to stretch around the hole. Hopefully, if we do it in one fell swoop this time, it's gonna work a little bit better. I'm gonna heat it up. Oh yeah, whew. Oh, that was a big pain in the ass. Wow. Whew. Oh man, I got to give my hands a break now. Oh, my fingers, these old fingers that aren't like they used to be, but we got this baby on. Whew. Yeah, now I gotta clean up the lip on both sides of these to make sure it has a nice clean surface when we end up putting the clamps on, because we want to make sure that's dry so it doesn't slip off and let any grease go through. Now that we got it in, I'm gonna have to go ahead, like I said, clean everything up. I noticed right now I was gonna clamp it down up here before I cut it, but it looks like I don't have much room to actually fill the grease and do everything and actually see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and just trim it right along that line right there just to get it cut off and remove the excess that we won't be using. Like I said earlier, we're only going to use the smallest part of this boot. The big part in the back here is not needed for this boot. Like I said, we have to trim this boot down, so I'm going to use a razor blade. Carefully follow basically the line back here. So before I go ahead and fill this thing up, I want to clean out the bottom rim here and actually put the clamp on. I'm going to just lightly secure it so that way this side doesn't slip down when we fill it up with the grease. So what I'm going to do is get some brake parts cleaner, spray it around the edge, and then use a screwdriver with a rag and get the lip of the rubber. Right there, you want to make sure you get it right onto that little lip, and then we want to go ahead and get the clamp on here. So this clamp kind of comes loose, just kind of unroll it, loop it through here, and then want to go ahead and just clamp it till it's tight, and then we'll use that tool that I showed you guys earlier to actually clamp it down and lock it. So you want to just get it as far as you can by hand, and then the rest of the way you use that clamping thing. So next we're going to go ahead and fill the boot up with the grease. Since most of the grease was still in the actual CV up here, and my boot is only like half of the overall boot, you won't even need this whole pack for this. So what we're going to do is just tear apart and fill as much as we can into the boot. Once it goes in there, the actual spinning and everything inside here will distribute everything, so you don't have to worry about really spreading it out. So now that we got it filled up and pretty much clean, I'm going to start clamping down. I want to make sure this thing is tight, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my tool on here and just fit it so it grabs it, and you want to make sure it gets grabbed nice and square and starts pulling it down. Make sure that top one over here is held tight, and then the bottom, this one helps if you had 4 hands helping you. Go ahead and just start clamping it down. Do it slowly, make sure it grabs and everything's nice and square. Make sure you got a nice square, it's closing properly. If you have to flip it, then go ahead and loosen it a little bit and flip it around just to make sure. And then with these aftermarket ones, you don't want to tighten them too much because you never know the quality of these things. End up breaking it or something. Check, make sure it doesn't move too much. Spin, it should be in there. So go ahead and clean the top, make sure everything's grease free and line up. A lot of times people like to line up all these little crimps in the same direction just to make sure it looks clean and OCD. All right, now that I cleaned it up, make sure everything's lined up and the edge and everything's all the way up. I want to go ahead and get this thing on there and start tightening it down. Slowly get it. Make sure that we nice and square. Don't go in too fast. All right, everything nice and clean now. tight. It's not going anywhere. I got a nice squeeze on the rubber. We're pretty much done. Go ahead and clean everything off. Make sure it's nice and dry of the grease and everything around the edge, and put this thing back in. Thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this quick video on rebuilding, or at least changing the boot on the 2IS axle. As you can see, on a lot of these newer Lexuses, the axle and the boot is not serviceable anymore, and this is really your only option, doing that quick boot using the cone. As you can see, that method, it takes a little bit of muscle and just trying to squeeze it on like I did. But if you have the right cone and the right muscle, you can pull it through enough just to pop it on. Hopefully this thing is a long-term solution and it lasts, but I'll update you guys later on if I have any issues with this, but hopefully it'll last to the rest of the life of this car. Anyways, if you guys found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. Remember guys, for all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.